So this video is going to be looking at the concept of Tawhid and with reference to Allah as omnipotent and merciful. So this is the key belief in Islam about the oneness of God. Key terms: Tawhid means the oneness of Allah. Shahada is the declaration of faith Muslims make, the first pillar of Islam. And shirk, which is polytheism or idolatry, worshipping things which are not God. This page you'll have separately, and I would use this as we go through this video to fill in and make notes. So all of these questions are going to be answered as part of this discussion, and this would also form the basis of an essay plan on this question, which you'll see right at the top, which says, explain the concept of Tawhid with reference to Allah as omnipotent and merciful. So the important surah you need to understand is Surah 112. You can see it on screen here. He is Allah, the one and only. Allah the eternal, absolute, he begot none, nor was he begotten, and there is none like him. And so this, as you can see around the edge with the annotations, has a lot of meaning about what this tells us about Allah. Importantly, the difficulty in trying to understand him, it rejects polytheism, and it also shows Allah as something which is beyond time and space, also beyond human understanding, but also close to us, and something which can be kind of worshipped. So what do Muslims mean when they talk of the oneness of Allah, and what does this actually mean? How can we apply it, and how can you explain it in one of your essays? So I'm just going to click on to the next slide now. Okay, and so you can say things like, he's the centre of Muslim belief. They have an important word, Tawhid, which is the oneness of Allah. They believe he's the source of power and love. He's the creator of everything. He's the power behind the universe and within the universe. He's the source of guidance for human beings. He knows everything, sees everything. He can do anything, and he has no equal. So bottom left of your worksheet, you'll see this question about Allah being the creator and omnipotent. According to the Quran, the Prophet Muhammad's teachings, Allah has several beautiful names. The Islamic tradition lists 99 of these names, and Allah is the most beautiful of them. He has created the heavens and the earth for just ends, far is he above having partners as they ascribe to him. So Allah is the creator of the universe and remains both imminent and imminent, which means he's both part of creation yet maintains a distance in creation as well, allowing us free will. So this is quite an interesting concept of him being present within us, around us, absolutely part of creation, but also separate to it. So it's quite difficult to kind of experience him. There's a couple of key terms there. Allah's made everything out of ex nihilo, so out of nothing. And there's also ideas in the Quran where everything's made out of water as well, which is probably an ancient Greek philosophical idea, which has sort of been developed kind of into Islam. And you'll see some quotes that support that. So the next question is Allah being merciful. So we're told he's loving. Most of the surahs begin with the phrase Bismillah, which means the merciful. But you've also got this question around God judging people, and would an all-loving God judge people and send people to hell? We're told that only the kafir, so the unbelievers, need worry about this, but it's obviously up to Allah to decide who is good and who is bad. So this is an interesting question in Islam. So the next question is about whether God is transcendent or imminent. If he's imminent, he's within the universe, and you can worship him and experience him. What's imminent is kind of around you. But if you're transcendent, you're above and you're beyond the universe. So that's quite difficult. We know that everything in creation is dependent upon God's power. Even though God is meant to be transcendent, we can also see that Allah is also imminent, and he's still very close to people. We know this from one of the surahs in the Quran, which says we are closer to him than his jugular vein. This means Allah is close to us, but also fully part of his creation, but also separate to creation as well, which is quite confusing and one of the evaluative questions we're going to be sort of discussing. This is a development of this idea of how do we describe Allah. We've got numerous passages in the Quran which describe God in a sort of human way. The beneficent is firmly established on the throne, like a king. Everything will perish except his face. That you are brought up under my eye. So all of these compare God almost like a human. So these are what we call anthropomorphic features. So he's human-like. Should we take these literally or not? And there's disagreements in Islam kind of about this whole question. So if Allah is beyond human understanding or difficult to describe, how do you communicate these ideas? Can words do justice to Allah? Because words are just kind of symbols, are just shapes on a page. And it's difficult to draw Allah, which is something which is beyond our physical world. And so there is prohibitions in Islam against drawing images of Allah or depicting him in any way. This is what causes some of the tensions around the world we see today. So I'm going to show a couple of examples of what Islam does allow. And so this is one of the famous mosques in Iran. It's called the Rainbow Mosque. And so the patterns in the windows, the symmetrical and geometrical patterns, which sort of symbolise and represent the sort of patterns found in the universe from Allah. Because quite a beautiful way of doing it. So no stained glasses and so on. And this example here is calligraphy. So the writing is a beautiful work of art, and you can see the way he's drawing the shapes. It's very meticulous. It's very slow. This again is allowed in Islam. So the opposite to Tawhid is shirk, and this is a sin in Islam. And this is a person who worships something else instead of Allah. Or worshipping or placing something alongside Allah, bringing up to kind of his level. And so what is it? And so it could be associating a partner with God, and this goes back to Allah around the Kaaba, and then he had sisters, and he was a high god, so there was other gods associated with him. And it could be elevating other things to his status, saying we have similar attributes to God. On screen now you can see two quotations, so you could pause the video and have a quick look at those ones and see what you think about those. So these represent star signs, a sort of pagan piece of art there, worshipping nature, worshipping the moon, and also got the Druids down the bottom as well, who famously worship nature and worship the sun. This would all be seen as examples of shirk and was going on in Muhammad's time. Other examples include if you worship people or things. This is an Ed Sheeran concert here, and so we're fans worshipping him for some reason. I have no idea why. Why would you worship him? I don't know. Okay, thank goodness that slide's gone. So how does it affect people, Muslims' lives? When they speak of the oneness of Allah, sorry, that's my 2-year-old chat in the background. What was I saying? So when Muslims speak of the oneness of Allah, they say that Allah is at the centre of their belief, and it's the focus of prayer, judgment, reading the Quran, how they behave, attending Hajj. It's kind of a backbone, if you like, to their kind of beliefs. Here you can see an example of some Muslims at Hajj. Doing their prayers, doing their rakas. And then, so how would it affect their lives if you're avoiding shirk? And so you could pause that slide and have a little look at these examples. I'm not going to read them through now. So let's have a look at the evaluative question that would come up in this part of the course. It might ask you something about, is the concept of Allah coherent? So the lines of argument are going to be along the ideas of Allah being imminent, yet transcendent within the world, yet outside the world. Also being merciful, but also being a punisher as well. And then how you describe a being which is kind of almost beyond kind of human understanding, so it's quite difficult to do. And so on screen now you'll see a bullet point plan that you can use to kind of help you. We've got ideas on monotheism, which isn't a strictly a Muslim idea. It was in Christianity, it was in Judaism, it was Zoroastrianism before. You've got the quotations about Allah being close, like our jugular vein. How can you be a judge and merciful? Allah could be similar to the God of Aristotle, the prime mover, which would mean he's outside of creation, separate to it. But this would make him impersonal, and so it wouldn't make him imminent, it would make him transcendent. So how does that work? If Allah is beyond the physical, it would be impossible to describe or experience him at all. This is an empiricist argument from David Hume, full stop. You could also discuss how the calligraphy, the artwork and things comes in as a way of kind of getting around this issue. You could also put an emphasis on angels, jinn, spirits who work as intermediaries between God and human beings. This is similar to one of Plato's ideas about the form of the good. You might look that up. And then you could also talk about the problems of using kind of language, but eventually it all comes down to faith.